Ma'am, we need to see proof of citizenship now.
I'm an American veteran. I served in Afghanistan. You have no right to stop me.
We have every right. Show us your papers or you're coming with us.
You want proof? Fine. But you're gonna regret every second of what happens next.
The parking lot of the Lowe's home improvement in San Antonio was blazing under the Texas sun when they approached her. 2:15 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon, heat radiating off the asphalt in visible waves, the temperature gauge on the bank sign across the street reading 102 degrees. Natasha Reeves had just loaded lumber into her pickup truck for the deck she was building in her backyard. 34 years old, wearing a faded Spurs t-shirt and jeans, work boots dusty from the lumberyard. Nothing about her appearance screamed veteran except maybe the way she carried herself, that particular awareness that comes from spending years watching for threats. She was reaching for her driver's door when she heard boots on pavement behind her, moving with purpose. 3 federal agents in tactical vests, ice badges gleaming in the sunlight. They were part of a joint task force with San Antonio Police Department, working off an intelligence bulletin about suspected document fraud networks allegedly operating in the area. According to their operational briefing, they'd been directed to conduct targeted inquiries at commercial locations where fraudulent employment documents had reportedly been used. Whether that intelligence was solid or simply provided cover for broad enforcement sweeps would later become a central question in litigation. The parking lot security camera, mounted on a light pole near the garden center entrance, captured everything with perfect clarity. The afternoon sun was so bright that shadows were sharp and short, visibility flawless. The timestamp read 14 hours 15 minutes and 37 seconds. The lead agent was Hayes, broad-shouldered and moving like he'd never been told no. Flanked by agents Morton and Lynn, all 3 wearing body cameras that were already recording, all 3 assuming this would be routine. Stop, demand papers, process done. They had no idea they were approaching a former Army intelligence officer with 2 tours in Afghanistan, a Bronze Star for valor, and training in documentation, interrogation, and strategic thinking. They had no idea she'd spent her military career in situations where one wrong move meant death, and she'd learned to stay 3 steps ahead of everyone in the room. Or in this case, the parking lot. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. "Ma'am, Immigration and Customs Enforcement," Hayes called out, his hand resting on his belt near his weapon. The security camera captured his approach, his posture aggressive, already treating her like a suspect. "We need to see your identification and proof of citizenship." Natasha turned slowly, deliberately, her hands visible at her sides, her posture relaxed but balanced. The camera captured her face, calm, assessing, no fear visible. "On what grounds?" Her voice was steady, almost conversational. "What probable cause do you have to stop me?" Hayes stepped closer into the frame with her now, both clearly visible. Morton moved to flank her right side. Lynn took the left. Classic containment formation. They were boxing her in and the camera was recording every step. "We're conducting a targeted inquiry as part of a joint task force operation. There's been reports of document fraud in this commercial area. We need to verify your status." "Document fraud," Natasha repeated, her eyes moving between all 3 agents. "What specific information connects me to document fraud? What description were you given? Because if you're stopping me based solely on my appearance in this parking lot, that's not a targeted inquiry. That's racial profiling. You saw a black woman loading lumber into her truck and decided to demand papers. Am I wrong?" Lynn shifted uncomfortably. Hayes pressed forward anyway, stepping even closer, invading her space. The camera captured the distance shrinking, captured Natasha holding her ground without backing up or advancing. "Ma'am, if you're here legally, this will take 5 minutes. Just show us your documentation." "I don't have to show you anything without probable cause," Natasha replied, her voice carrying clearly across the parking lot, picked up not just by the agent's body cameras but by the security camera's audio sensors. "Fourth Amendment protects me from unreasonable seizures. You stopping me without articulable suspicion? That's unreasonable. That's unconstitutional. And I'm not giving you what you want just because you have badges." Hayes's jaw tightened, the camera capturing his face reddening in the harsh sunlight. "Ma'am, refusing to cooperate makes this suspicious. I'm going to need to see ID right now, or you're coming with us." Here's where Natasha's intelligence training kicked in. Not the combat training, though years of staying alive in hostile territory hummed underneath every move she made. The strategic thinking. The understanding that in any conflict, Whoever controls the information controls the outcome. She pulled her phone from her pocket slowly, deliberately, making sure the movement was captured. No sudden movements, nothing that could be claimed as threatening. "I'm recording this interaction," she announced clearly, her voice projecting. A woman walking toward the store entrance stopped, turned to watch. A man loading bags in his car paused, his attention drawn. The camera captured them all, witnesses materializing. "I'm invoking my Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable seizure. I'm also informing you that I'm a United States Army veteran, honorably discharged. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. My truck has veteran plates which you can clearly see behind me. You have no probable cause to stop me, and I'm not consenting to any search or seizure." Then she did something the agents didn't expect. She hit a program number on her phone, and suddenly her attorney was on speaker. She'd had this number set up since the day she'd watched IC agents harass her neighbor, a sweet abuela who'd been a citizen for 30 years but looked vulnerable enough to target. Natasha had learned in the military, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. The dial tone was brief, then a woman's voice, professional and sharp. "This is attorney Diana Velasquez with the Texas Civil Rights Project. Who am I speaking with?" The security camera captured Hayes's expression, the look of a man who just realized this wasn't going to be the easy stop he'd anticipated. Morton glanced at Lynn, both agents clearly thrown. The camera recorded their body language, the shifting weight, the exchanged looks. "Ma'am, you can't," Hayes started. "I absolutely can," Natasha interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "I'm being detained without probable cause by federal agents who've refused to articulate any specific suspicion of criminal activity. Attorney Velasquez, I've invoked my Fourth Amendment rights. They're continuing to detain me in this parking lot without justification. Officers, this is Diana Velasquez and I'm recording this call." The lawyer's voice came through the phone speaker, clear enough for the security camera to pick up. "What is your probable cause for this stop? Be specific. What crime are you investigating?" Silence. The camera captured all 4 figures standing in the blazing sun, Natasha with her phone held out, the 3 agents in a semicircle around her. The seconds ticked by on the camera's timestamp. 14 hours 18 minutes and 45 seconds. 14 hours 18 minutes and 46 seconds. 14 hours 18 minutes and 47 seconds. Hayes finally responded, his voice tight. "We're conducting a targeted inquiry as part of a joint task force operation regarding document fraud in this area. What specific articulable facts connect my client to document fraud?" Velasquez pressed, her voice cutting through the afternoon heat. "What description were you given? What evidence do you have that she's involved in any criminal activity? What makes this stop targeted rather than a random demand for papers based on appearance?" More silence. The security camera captured the parking lot continuing to function around this frozen confrontation. Cars pulling in and out, shoppers walking past with carts, some stopping to watch now, more phones coming out. A woman in a Lowe's vest stood at the entrance, watching with her hand over her mouth. A man in a truck slowed down, his window down, recording on his phone. Natasha stood perfectly still, phone held out, her other hand visible at her side. She wasn't resisting, wasn't fleeing, wasn't giving them anything they could use. Just standing there in the middle of a public parking lot, forcing them to either articulate probable cause or admit they had none. The camera captured her stance, the relaxed but ready posture of someone who'd been trained to wait, to assess, to act only when necessary. "We have discretion to verify immigration status as part of our operational directive," Hayes said finally, taking a step closer, his hand moving toward Natasha's arm. "Should federal agents be required to have probable cause before demanding citizenship papers?" Comment below. This wasn't about border security. This was about whether the Constitution protects veterans the same way it protects everyone else, or whether serving your country means nothing when your skin is black. "Discretion isn't a blank check," Velasquez's voice came through the phone. "You need reasonable suspicion. Do you have it? Can you articulate it?" "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us for processing," Hayes said, ignoring the lawyer's question. He reached for Natasha's arm. She took one calculated step back, not aggressive, not fleeing, just maintaining distance. The movement was controlled, deliberate, clearly defensive rather than evasive. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice carrying authority that came from years of giving orders in combat zones. "I'm not resisting, I'm not fleeing, I'm standing in a public parking lot where I have every right to be. You're attempting to seize me without probable cause. Attorney Velasquez, are you recording this?" "Every word," Velasquez confirmed. "Officers, if you detain my client without probable cause, You're violating her constitutional rights. She's invoked those rights clearly. She's offered you no reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Any detention at this point is unlawful. Hayes grabbed her arm anyway. The security camera captured his hand closing around her bicep, captured Natasha's body tensing but not pulling away. I am not resisting, she said loudly, projecting her voice toward the growing crowd of observers. I am being seized against my will without probable cause. I am a U.S. citizen. I am a combat veteran. I served this country in Afghanistan. And I am documenting this constitutional violation. She let Hayes pull her hands behind her back, let him snap handcuffs around her wrists, all while keeping her phone active in her hand, speaker on, her attorney listening to every sound. The security camera captured the cuffing, showing Hayes wrenching her arms back harder than necessary. Morton looked uncomfortable, his weight shifting. Lynn scanned the crowd of witnesses, his hand near his weapon, clearly nervous about the audience they'd attracted. Badge numbers? Natasha said, her voice steady despite the handcuffs. All three of you. I want badge numbers, names, and your supervisor's contact information. You'll get all that at processing, Hayes said, his hand on her arm, starting to steer her toward their vehicle parked in the outer lot. The camera's view didn't extend that far, but it captured them walking out of frame, Natasha's steady pace despite being handcuffed, the agents flanking her. Am I under arrest? Natasha asked loud and clear. If so, what are the charges? You need to read me my Miranda rights if I'm under arrest. You're being detained for processing, Hayes said, the distinction meaningless but giving him cover. Detained requires reasonable suspicion, Natasha countered, still calm, still projecting for the witnesses and her phone recording. Arrested requires probable cause. Which is it? Because you have neither. They reached the federal vehicle, a black SUV with tinted windows, now out of view of the security camera. Hayes opened the back door. Natasha stopped moving, her feet planted. Not resisting, just ceasing cooperation. I'm not getting in that vehicle, she said clearly. I have not been lawfully detained. I have not been charged with any crime. I am a United States citizen, and I am invoking my right to remain here. Ma'am, get in the vehicle, Hayes ordered, his hand on her back pushing. Years of PT, of carrying gear, of physical training made her immovable when she chose to be. I'm not resisting, she repeated. But I'm not voluntarily complying with an unlawful order. If you put me in that vehicle, you're kidnapping me. Officers, this is Attorney Velasquez. The voice came from Natasha's phone, still in her cuffed hands behind her back. You are on notice that this detention is unlawful. My client has invoked her Fourth Amendment rights. She has identified herself as a U.S. citizen and veteran. She has committed no crime in your presence. If you remove her from this location, you are violating clearly established constitutional rights, and there will be civil and potentially criminal consequences. Hayes hesitated. Morton spoke up for the first time. Maybe we should call the supervisor. We don't need a supervisor, Hayes snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. Lynn was actively backing away now, his body language screaming that he wanted no part of this. The parking lot crowd had grown. At least 15 people were watching, multiple phones out, recording. The woman in the Lowe's vest was on her phone, probably calling management or security. This was becoming a scene, and scenes meant scrutiny, meant questions, meant accountability that Hayes hadn't planned for. Badge number 7294, Natasha said, reading the number on Hayes's vest, her voice carrying. Agent Hayes. Badge number 5831, Agent Morton. Badge number 6103, Agent Lynn. Icefield Office, San Antonio. Attorney Velasquez, did you get those numbers? I got them, Velasquez confirmed. Officers, I'm notifying your San Antonio office right now. Your supervisor will be receiving a call within 5 minutes. I strongly suggest you release my client immediately. The standoff lasted another 3 minutes. Natasha standing beside the SUV, handcuffed but unbowed, refusing to get in. Hayes gripping her arm, clearly unsure how to proceed. Morton and Lynn backing off, distancing themselves from Hayes's decision. The crowd watching, recording, bearing witness. Hayes's radio crackled. Agent Hayes, this is Supervisor Thornton. Stand down. Release the subject immediately. Return to the office. Hayes's face flushed with embarrassment and anger, the realization that he'd been overruled. He uncuffed Natasha roughly, the movement jerky, hostile. She rubbed her wrists, red marks already forming from the cuffs. I want a complaint form, she said, her voice still steady. I'm filing a formal complaint for violation of my Fourth Amendment rights, for racial profiling, for unlawful detention, and for excessive force. You can file at the office, Hayes muttered, already moving toward the driver's door. No, I'm not going to your office, Natasha replied. I'm going to the ACLU. I'm going to my attorney's office. And then I'm going to sue every single one of you personally, and the agency for everything I can get. Because what you did here today was illegal, unconstitutional, and caught on camera. She held up her phone, still recording. Hayes drove away without responding. Morton and Lynn followed in a second vehicle, both looking shell-shocked. Natasha stood in the parking lot, rubbing her wrists, looking directly at the security camera. She knew exactly where it was, had clocked it when she first parked. Old habits from intelligence work. Always know where the surveillance is. Always control the recorded narrative. Attorney Velasquez's voice came through the phone speaker. Natasha, are you okay? I'm okay, Natasha replied, her voice finally showing a slight tremor now that the immediate danger had passed. Shaken but okay. They didn't get what they wanted. What they wanted doesn't matter, Velasquez said firmly. What they did was illegal. I'm requesting the parking lot footage right now, plus their body camera footage. And then we're going to make them regret every second of this. The lawsuit was filed 2 weeks later, after Velasquez had obtained the security camera footage and the 3 body camera recordings. Dr. Natasha Reeves versus United States of America, Agent Hayes, Agent Morton, Agent Lynn. The complaint alleged Fourth Amendment violations, unlawful seizure, detention without probable cause, excessive force, racial profiling, and selective enforcement. The evidence was overwhelming. The security footage showing the entire encounter from approach to when they walked out of frame. Audio capturing every word, every invocation of rights, every failure to articulate probable cause. Body camera footage filling in the rest. Timestamps proving the detention lasted 18 minutes without justification. The government tried to settle early, offering $50,000. Velasquez laughed in their faces. Your agents handcuffed a combat veteran in a parking lot for the crime of being black while buying lumber. Try again. They came back with $200,000. Still insulting. The case went to trial 15 months after the parking lot confrontation. The courtroom in San Antonio was packed every single day. Veterans groups filled the gallery, wearing their uniforms and pins. Civil rights organizations sent representatives. Local media covered it like the Super Bowl. And the jury, 12 Texans of varied backgrounds, watched the footage with expressions that shifted from confusion to shock to outright anger. The security camera's crystal-clear view of Hayes approaching without cause, demanding papers without justification. The containment formation, 3 agents boxing her in. Lynn's discomfort, his body language showing he knew this was wrong. The body camera footage of Natasha's refusal to get in the vehicle, her planted stance, her assertion of rights even in handcuffs. The footage played for 40 minutes, every angle, every moment, the afternoon sunlight making everything visible, undeniable, irrefutable. Natasha testified for 7 hours across 3 days. She walked the jury through her service record, 2 tours in Afghanistan, Bronze Star for Valor awarded after she'd saved 3 soldiers during an ambush by calling in air support while under direct fire. She described the irony of serving her country in combat zones only to be treated like a criminal in a parking lot for buying lumber. She explained her intelligence training, how she'd been taught to document everything, to control information, to stay 3 steps ahead. I knew the parking lot had a security camera, she told the jury. I positioned myself in view of it. I kept my hands visible. I announced everything I was doing. I invoked my rights clearly and repeatedly. I did everything right and they violated my constitutional rights anyway. Velasquez called Supervisor Thornton, the man whose radio call had ended the parking lot standoff, as a hostile witness. Under oath, he admitted the agents had no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, no justification for the stop. Based on the footage and the reports, this stop should never have happened, he testified, and the courtroom erupted. The defense tried to argue qualified immunity, tried to claim the agents had acted in good faith based on their training. Velasquez destroyed that argument by putting ICE's own training materials into evidence, showing that agents were explicitly taught they needed reasonable suspicion for stops, that anonymous tips without corroboration weren't sufficient, that racial profiling was prohibited. They knew the rules, she told the jury in closing arguments. They just didn't think the rules applied when the target was a black woman in a parking lot. The jury deliberated for 6 days. Natasha spent them at home, working on her deck, trying to pretend her future wasn't hanging on 12 strangers' decision. When the call came, she was in her truck, hands shaking as she answered. Verdicts in. Get to the courthouse. The courtroom was standing room only. The jury filed in and the foreman, a retired teacher named Patricia Gonzalez, stood with a piece of paper that would change Natasha's life. We find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. The room exploded with cheers and tears. The damages phase took another week. The jury heard about Natasha's PTSD, not from combat but from being handcuffed and detained in her own hometown. They heard from other veterans about the betrayal of serving your country only to have federal agents treat you like an enemy. They heard from economists about the value of constitutional rights, about what price should be paid when government violates them. When the jury announced the damages, even Velasquez looked stunned. $4.3 million in compensatory damages. $3.3 million in punitive damages. Total, $7.6 million. Hayes was terminated. Morton resigned. Lynn transferred to a desk position far from field work. In the months following the verdict, ICE's San Antonio field office underwent an internal review of enforcement practices. The agency issued clarifications regarding existing policies on reasonable suspicion requirements for stops and the documentation necessary for targeted inquiries. While officials maintained that proper procedures had always been in place, training materials were updated to emphasize the Fourth Amendment protections that apply regardless of immigration status, and supervisory oversight protocols were reinforced for field operations not based on active warrants. Natasha used part of her settlement to establish the Veterans' Rights Defense Fund, providing free legal services to veterans facing discrimination. She became a national speaker on civil rights and racial profiling, her parking lot stand becoming a case study in asserting rights under pressure. The camera footage became training material, not just for police and federal agents, but for civilians learning how to assert their rights. And in San Antonio, in that Lowe's parking lot where she'd been seized without cause, the security camera still records everything in high definition. Because sometimes the cameras that watch us can also protect us, when we're brave enough to stand in their view and refuse to back down. If you believe veterans deserve better, that the Fourth Amendment means something, and that standing up for your rights is the most American thing you can do, hit that subscribe and notification bell. We've got more stories coming that'll make you see your own rights differently. Because freedom isn't free, and sometimes the battles we fight at home matter just as much as the ones overseas.